The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Welcome in here. We are live today, live version of the New Warehouse Podcast here on LinkedIn. I see some people coming in. Thank you for joining us here in the beginning of this conversation. And today we are going to be taking a look back at warehousing this year as we are in December, and it's time to do that kind of thing at this time of year. And we have some great experts here with us today. We're going to be joined by Parth Pethani, who is the Director of Warehouse Innovation and Design at Prologis and a good friend of mine, and also Hunter HeLal, who is Head of Warehouse Product Solutions at Prologis Essentials. Additionally, so we're going to talk a little bit about what they've seen over last year, and I think, if you're familiar with Prologis, then you would know that they have a great perspective and a great position to be able to see what's happening in a lot of different operations for a lot of their clients. But if you're not familiar with Prologis Essentials, we're going to kick it off here, I think, and Hunter's going to explain to us what they do. But first, Parth and Hunter, welcome in, you guys. How are you guys doing today?
Doing wonderful. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Happy to get you both on. Happy to have this conversation. So for people that are not familiar with Prologis Essentials, Hunter, why don't you kind of kick it off and tell us all about what it is that you guys do?
Sure. So let's first just start quickly with Prologis. Prologis is the largest industrial real estate company on the planet. I think we currently have 1.2 billion square feet, but traditionally, we're the landlord. We're a transactional company who does leases, right? Mm-hmm. So nobody really thinks of the landlord to go for automation or storage solutions, but just over time, I think it kind of happened, naturally. Folks are moving in or moving out of spaces, and they either want the racking that's in there, or they want to sell their racking, and then, hey, landlord, can you help us out? And then you sell some racking, and hey, you might need some forklifts. Can you help us out with that? And so I think organically, that's kind of how it started. And now we've grown our expertise with smart folks like Parth and other folks on our team. But we can truly, I know a lot of people say turnkey, and we can argue whether it's really turnkey or not, but we're one of the only companies we can offer you the building. We can offer you equipment inside the building. We can really come in and assess. We have warehousing experts, so we can assess, hey, how can you optimize your warehouse? Where are your problems? We really just want to start with, what are your problems? And we can help you solve it, whether it's a dock door, a fan, racking, forklifts, automation, warehouse design. We can truly do it all. So that's the high level. Parth, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you made a great point. I think it's an evaluation that Prologis is going through. And I think one of the key things that you see, Kevin, with the evaluation is that I think how typically you would have seen 3PLs being that growth partners for brands in the past, where they like, hey, we can do everything so you can focus on your customer for the brands, from fulfillment to providing technology stack and everything. I think we are on a similar journey where we want to be that growth partners for warehouse operators. So we can be that warehouse experts from the building perspective, from within the building and outside the building as well. So sustainability part is very important for us as well, like physical security, automation, robotics, solar. So it's going to be really a growth partner that we are trying to be for a lot of our warehouse operators and customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, obviously with 1.2 billion square feet that you guys are managing, I'm sure you have a lot of in touch with the warehouse industry and being able to do that. And I see your buildings all over the place here in New Jersey, where I'm at, and where I travel to additionally. So, I think you're very in touch with that clientele, right? That's in the building. So it only makes sense that through the Essentials program that you're also now, offering all these other services. I mean, I think about it as, your local real estate agent, right? You go, you're buying a house or renting a place or something like that. And you say, oh, do you know a good landscaper, right? And that's kind of what you're doing, but saying like, oh, do you know a good place to get forklifts or racking or things of that nature? And I think it's great to see how you're putting that together and putting those pieces together for those tenants as well and these different warehousing companies. So obviously being involved in that level, you're certainly not only for looking out for what you can provide to your clients, understanding what trends are happening in warehousing, but also I'm sure seeing a lot firsthand too when you're dealing with them inside your building, seeing what they're doing and what's top of mind to them as well. So I think we're going to take a look here at, kind of the past year and some of the things that have stood out to you, maybe as trends, whether positive or negative in a sense. I'm sure there's a couple of different ways we can go with that. But, as we look over the last year, I mean, I'm curious what stands out to you as some of the major trends in 2024, specifically in warehousing. And maybe Hunter, you want to kick us off there and tell us a little bit about kind of what you've seen?
Yeah, so unfortunately, one of the biggest trends, since we are very tied with the warehouse, is in a lot of places rent has doubled or at least gone up 60%. And so, as companies are expanding, lots of renewals coming up, they really have to face the fact that, man, there's a huge bogey coming. So a lot of companies were looking to consolidate, move inventory, and really, hey, how do we maximize the warehouse that we have currently so we don't have to go get that extra building, which is also a little bit counterintuitive because we would love to sell you that extra building.
Yeah.
But more importantly, so from the Prologis side, but the Essentials side, I mean, we have a phrase called one team, one Prologis. If you start with the customer first and you fulfill the customer's needs, which right now the need is let's maximize your warehouse, and Essentials will help you do that. Sure, it's going to postpone you going hopefully into another Prologis building in a year or two, but hopefully you trust what we can offer and you kind of stay in the family. So unfortunately, that's kind of the trend in the warehousing, but which is also great from an optimization perspective. I love being on calls with customers. I think some of you probably read my background, but I'm not a salesperson, or this is my first foray into being on the vendor side. So I approach everything from an engineer, a designer, an optimizer. I've been in the warehouse space. I would joke around that I've made a lot of mistakes over 20 years designing warehouses, but always boots on the ground, fixing those problems and learning. But talking to some customers, they want to make a jump. Hey, we want robots. And I've been on some calls like that. And I'm like, well, let us first understand your data. Let's understand what your problems really are. And they go start researching robotic companies already. But what a lot of folks need is to have a process and understanding of how to make that jump. Like, is it because of labor? Like, where are your pain points in your warehouse? And a lot of folks just don't know how to assess it. They just, I want robots.
Yeah.
I'm like, great, we'll sell you a robot, but that's not what we're going to do. Like, I even asked a company, well, what if I save you like 20 cents a package and you never got a robot? They were like, yeah, that'd be pretty cool, but
robots are cooler.
robots are cool too. And I'm like, okay. So it's super interesting. Obviously, robotics and automation can help you make that leap, but you really got to understand what it takes. Everybody has different WMSs, different technology. They might have to upgrade that before. Depending on where their pain points are, they might not need to integrate with their WMS. So folks are looking at ways to save money. There's a lot of labor constrained areas. I think we all know that. And some companies are, I always try to ask, what's your motivation for wanting, let's say, automation or robotics? One company we're working with in particular, because you can go. We always say scrappy, or I can give you the Cadillac version. Or one company said, you know what, this is a safety concern. So I honestly don't care how much it is, but I don't want my associates having to do this process anymore. I'm like, well, that's great. we'll try to make it as cost effective as possible, but we'll solve your safety problem with a robotic solution. So everybody's wanting to, I mean, the trend is let's save money. How can we do it?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think saving money kind of never goes out of style, I would say, right? I mean,
yeah, especially when your rent's doubling, because that's a major cost for companies, right? So,
yeah, I think that's such a important thing too to note there as well. And I think, I love your honesty there too, in saying that, like, hey, we're Prologis, like, obviously we want to sell you a building or have you rent another building from us, but you're also recognizing like the fact that companies are going to need to be optimizing in order to be able to navigate that in a sense a little bit. And I think that's, kind of where you're helping out on the essential side. Parth, anything you want to add in there in terms of like trends that we've seen in 2024 here?
Yeah, I think 2024 specifically, whatever Hunter said, I think it's on point just because I think it's the rents have increased since, I would say, starting COVID. One of the things that I saw in 2024 is like just because of the uncertainty with the elections, everyone was holding on to their cash. They were just doing the bare minimum that they needed to do. And also coming out of COVID, everyone expanded so much because everyone was holding on to inventory, front-loaded a lot of inventory. Now going through that last, I would say 2 to 3 years, 2024 or late 2023, they started to see that they don't need that excess capacity. Right, so they are either, as I was saying, consolidating or trying to move to a smaller space, but that will change as well now because they have what's going to happen in 2025. They know the election results are out. They know the policies that will be implemented. So looking into 2025, and just to extrapolate your question, I think what will happen is we will see a lot of excitement, if you will, around investments that are needed to be done. We'll also see a little bit walking on a tightrope where they have to front load some inventory just because of the tariffs that are being in talks versus the what CapEx spend I can do. So that would be a tricky balance for customers or for brands who rely heavily on the imports. So that would be an interesting one that I'm keeping my eyes on too.
Big trend, and I'm surprised it's not catching on faster. But we are seeing folks who maybe they didn't understand or realize, but it's not. We would love to offer financing and things, but there's tons of people who can. But you can get that ASRS system, expensive equipment, and you can finance all of it. And I think that's becoming super attractive, especially when they look at moving into, let's say, a Prologis building. A lot of folks, they're not paying capital for this building. They're upfront, right? They're leasing it. And then when they realize, oh, I could get $20 million of equipment and lease that also. And that's catching on, especially when folks are capital constrained. So there's just so many ways that the industry / essentials can help. That's why it keeps saying, like, we ask customers, like, what are your pain points? And then we will find a way to solve those pain points for you.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think you're in an interesting position to be able to do that as well and kind of be that almost like one-stop shop in a sense, right? Put all those pieces together and figure out, how to help your clients navigate that stuff, which I think is pretty cool position to be in a sense as well. But, Hunter, one of the things you were mentioning in there, I was talking about automation and robotics, and obviously we continue to see things like that and very interesting emerging technologies coming out. And I think, for me personally, one of the things that I find very cool about our industry is that there are these like cutting edge technologies and emerging technologies that come out and they find like practical application or use case in the logistics warehousing space, which I think is really cool to be a part of. But, Parth, obviously I think many people know you as like a robot guy, right? I mean, it says right there on your thing, designing robot forward warehouses. So let's kind of kick it to you and, tell us about, from your perspective, I mean, what kind of emerging technologies kind of came out this year that really caught your attention?
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. Do you want more warehouse content delivered to your inbox? Sign up for our new email series called Warehouse Wisdom Wednesday to get an educational series of emails on warehouse basics delivered directly to you every Wednesday morning. Find the sign up link in the show notes.
Oh, and as you said, it's exciting. Warehousing space, for whatever right reasons, we get so much focus on new technologies that it's always exciting to learn about it. I think for me, there were a couple of, I would say, high level trends that really piqued my interest this year. One was, of course, the robots and automation space, right? We have seen a lot of excitement around going vertical using ASRS solutions, Cube ASRS solutions. Just going vertical is a trend. We have seen so many different solutions coming into that space. That's exciting for me because using, as Hunter like to say, Cube is king. And I'm sorry to steal that, Hunter, but that's something always exciting for us. Then the other trend that I'm really interested to see, or really curious to learn more about, is of course the humanoids. Of course, that they have a lot of companies are raising a lot of VC money on the humanoid space. I'm actively keeping my eyes closed to is to understand the applicability in the warehousing space. So that's something excited me this year. And the finally one that I want, it's something that only few companies or even maybe one or two companies are thinking about. But overall, I feel like the penetration of chat GTP kind of solutions into the WMS world, WES world, would be very interesting emerging technology to look for.
Interesting there. And interesting on that last point. I mean, do you see, people that you interact with or work with, are they, implementing that type of chatbot style generative AI into their operations? Like, I guess accepting it in an easy way and rapidly, or is there still a little uncertainty?
Honestly, the conversations that I had were mostly around from companies trying to penetrate that space, or startups, if you will. So from an end user perspective, I feel like every use of chat GTP kind of tools is honestly on their own DIY, right? So you just go to chat GTP or a Claude or Entropy or Gemini and just trying to do their own data analysis or just use that LLM functions there. But I haven't really seen, and I'll be surprised in the next 6 months if the tier one WMS doesn't come up with a simple chat agents that we can literally ask, hey, where is my order? What's the order status? Or where is that LPN? Kind of conversational AI-based WMS agents.
Yeah, interesting there. Yeah, I would check out Chat WMS. Give them a little shout out here because they're doing something like that. I think pretty interesting. But yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see some of these other WMS providers and how they kind of bring that to the table as well here additionally. And then Hunter, what about on your side, any emerging technologies? And I know Parth stole your line there, Cube is king, which I saw popping up all over LinkedIn yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah. So first off, those who know me know that I try to be as honest as possible. So again, I'm telling you, I put myself in, our customers' shoes because I was there for 20 years. So, everybody's been to these trade shows and such, and there's emerging technologies every year, and there's so many robotic arms and things. And I usually go up to folks and I'm like, all right, so what is your arm that does this? And you can't see my arm moving, but just picking up something from here and moving it to there. There's 300 companies that do that. Why is yours different? But if you just start from the warehouse perspective as a whole, I always look at what's the biggest bang for your buck. Because if you're going to spend capital and resources, you really need to look at a solution that is saving you something. And everything should be ROI based. And so there's probably a robotic solution, or at least an emerging solution for almost anything in the warehouse. But a lot of folks are focusing on unloading and loading. There's safety issues with that. In certain regions, it might be 120 degrees in a trailer, or it might be really cold. You're lifting packages. Yeah. So, but are you really going to get a bang for your buck from an ROI perspective? You might replace one person with a robot, but what folks forget is that now you have to add a skilled labor person to deal with that robot when that robot goes down, which they all do. So you might have to add a controls or maintenance person. So now you just added somebody more expensive. So you save somebody in a trailer. So is that really the best bang for your buck to start out? Or do you look at somewhere like, hey, I've got a lot of people out there picking. I've got 30, 40, 50 people. That's where I can get a big bang. I will say, I think one of the coolest emerging technologies is something called BrightPick. And they're a couple years old, and I've at each trade show each year, the past 2 years, I forget the gentleman's name. I think he's the head of sales there. But
I think he's listening here, James Cox.
No.
He's in the audience.
Hey, James. Yeah. So, year one, it had come out, and I'm like, this is really interesting, but I don't want to be the beta test. And then we talked again this past year, and I see them growing, but that actually replaces labor, and I can't speak to the percentage. And then there's the healthy arguments of, well, that probably doesn't pick as fast as humans, and the argument could be, what do you care, as long as I sign up for this many units per hour or whatever. So I think there's a big labor savings, and a lot of folks are in labor constrained areas. I mean, I don't think that's a secret that we're not trying to replace labor, but a lot of folks can't get the labor, and so they need solutions. So I think I'm giving a pitch to BrightPick there. I think that's pretty cool. But again, I have that tagline that was stolen called "Cube is King." A lot of the solutions don't maximize the cube of the warehouse. So if you have 40-foot clear height, there's a lot of great solutions that go up to like 14 feet. So the engineer in me is like, yeah, but then you have to create like another floor or two, and you're going to spend $50 million doing that. But again, it's when we've got like 5,000 plus customers in the US. So it's really every single industry that you can imagine. And it's really just finding, not everybody has a 40-foot clear warehouse. So like, again, back to those, what are those specific customer needs? And there's some great solutions out there. But I also look at, when you move into the really expensive, like automated storage and retrieval systems, but there's several out there. And, as a decision maker, the customer side, I always look at, there's some cool technologies out there. Some are 5-6 years old, some are 20 years old with, 1,500 installations. And my joke is there's probably not 1,500 bad installations, or they wouldn't be a company. So sometimes you have to look at, are you willing to take the risk on an emerging technology, because you're going to have, the software is just, it's not going to be hardened yet. And so you're going to have to spend a little extra time and dedicate resources, maybe hire new folks to focus on making that automation work.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a great point there too, because I mean, I've experienced that in myself personally, where I was working for a company and we brought in this shuttle system, and it was a big leap for the company and technology wise. And yeah, they were totally unprepared with, what the maintenance side of things were going to look like, and all from that perspective. And it was a big scramble after the go live to try and find somebody that could come in and help and, be able to do that type of maintenance. So I think that's a great point there. But I'm curious, going back to your point on the trends and seeing, these rent increases and, the cube is king, talking about that. I mean, do you see more companies where they're trying to like increase their capacity by going vertical and maximizing that cube instead of like looking at a second building first or a next building from that?
Yeah, there's one company that we're talking to now who they have a warehouse. They're not going to go to another one. They have like 19,000 pallet positions in racking across the whole warehouse, and they want to get that to 30 plus. So that's somebody who has racking already. And then, they want to jump to, well, hey, we can do that with double deeps. But I always go back to, well, you could, but like, let's get your data and let's look at your SKU mix and, your velocity and your volumes. And you could go to VNA. There's a lot of things you could do, but you don't want to just go to double deeps just to get the pallet positions. There could be 2 or 3 different solves in your warehouse. But we really got to start with, give us some information and data and let us come back to you with, hey, this is how we think you can maximize your warehouse, because your SKU mix might actually hurt you to go to double deeps or pushbacks or things like that. So, and there are folks who, it's really easy to assess a warehouse when you walk in and you can see the ceiling across the whole warehouse.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys are only using about, 8 feet.
Yeah, there's some opportunity here. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would definitely say yes. Maximizing their current spaces is a huge trend.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I could see that happening definitely, and I think even with the, as you mentioned, like rent increase, right? Like, how do we get more out of what we currently have, and is that enough to suffice for a longer period of time without having to look at a larger space or an additional space or whatever the case may be. So very interesting there. So we talked a little bit about kind of some of the trends from this year, and also some of the emerging technologies that you guys are looking at and have your attention. But I'm curious on the other side of things. I mean, what area of the warehouse do you think is kind of still lacking attention that it needs from a technology perspective? Like, where is there a gap there, and what challenges kind of still stick out from an operational perspective that maybe technology hasn't quite addressed or quite figured out yet?
I think I'll say it in two ways. First is from actual solutions to solve those problems. So when we think about the actual problems in the warehouse, there are technologies that are trying to solve the or can use more firepower, if you will, around is the loading, unloading. I also feel like the inventory management solutions can really be use some more brain power or firepower to solve for it because we saw drones coming out, we saw AMRs coming out. That is something I feel like can use some more firepower from a technology perspective. But I think there's also an aspect on the end user side that I think we always I feel like we should always do not forget them because on our end user side as well there is education part that's need to be done. I can develop 10 different technologies, 10 different robots, but if I don't have internal skills or if there is no one in my team who can really understand that, cut to the noise and help me out, just at least understand basic things, I think that could be a challenge for any new technology adoption within my warehouse. So I think that is one of the things that I feel it's not a technology perspective, but it's an operational bottleneck, if you will, that really needs attention from an end operator side as well.
Interesting. So from the education perspective, I mean, I think that's pretty interesting. How do you think we kind of address that? I think that's a really interesting thought.
I mean, there are multiple ways to solve for that, right? And again, it starts at the self-education, right? If we need to have some folks on your team who are open to go out, learn those things, and be actively involved in conversations beyond the floor, attend conversations like this one where they can just learn about different technologies, how to think about technologies or automation and robotics. Self-education is going to be one of the biggest thing, but it also comes down to like how to be involved in those opportunities. It's of course going to be on the individual level, but at the same time from an end user perspective, that if I was a leader at a warehouse operations building, let's say 10 warehouses, and I'm the warehouse operator for supply chain officer for that 3PL. One of the key things that I would like to do is at least I would dedicate at least 1 or 2 hours for 1 or 2 IEs on my within my payroll that, hey guys, spend a couple of hours every week, every month to learn something new and tell me what did you learn. Like that, something that's being enforced as well. But at the end, there are ways to solve for it, but it starts at self-education.
Very interesting there. And Hunter, what about you? What kind of gaps are you still seeing, and what challenges kind of stick out to you?
I'll start with like technology and then or some specific areas. But
Sure.
what I think we're like 10 years in or 10 years plus of having a warehouse execution systems. And I don't know if they truly do what they say they're supposed to do yet. I don't think we're quite there, but I think it's moving in that way. And what I think a warehouse execution should be doing is looking at your goals for the day in the warehouse. It's looking at your trends. It's looking at the actual pick rates and the throughput of your equipment. And it's not just giving you a report like, hey, you said you needed 25,000 units and you're behind. You're at 20. But it's actually saying, hey, to get caught up to 25, you need to add 5 more people picking at this rate in this area, and you need to add this up front, and like actually tell you how to kind of like predictive modeling, or this is what you need to do to catch up versus just giving a report saying you're behind. I don't and again, I'm not a software expert, but I don't think those WESs do that quite yet. So I think that's a challenge and something that will be amazing when folks start figuring that out. what robots, and again, there's a solution for almost everything, but what robots don't do well yet is palletizing random cartons coming at you. I mean, the human mind is still better than robots, and we can play Tetris faster.
Yeah.
And so I know folks are trying to solve that. And if anybody on this call can do that, you're going to make $1 billion pretty quick. But there's tons of solutions for loading and unloading, and there's some decent ones out there. It's just that it's not the biggest. There's not like a one size fits all. It's not the biggest bang for the buck, in my opinion, of where you should start. Kind of with that robotic automation in your warehouse. But these are all fun challenges, and like there's tons of companies trying to solve it. So I think that's the cool part. And as long as a customer is willing to kind of, again, team up with those robotic companies and make it work, then I think they'll start going far. But you just can't expect to go get a robot and stick it out there, and then the company the vendor leaves, and then it's just going to work. You really have to focus and dedicate, internal resources to make that work.
Yeah, good point there. And I think too, it's interesting to see. Like you said, the human mind can still do some of these things better, especially when there's a lot of like variation, like you mentioned, when just random, packages coming down the line or something that need to be palletized. The robot can't necessarily decipher that, and certainly there's people working on that. And I've seen some examples and things, but the human mind can still, like you said, play Tetris a little faster in a sense, which I think is a great way to put it there. So it's interesting, some of these things that you guys pointed out from a trend perspective, emerging technology perspective, and just gaps kind of that still, could be either filled or improved upon. But, you guys, like you said earlier, Hunter, I think you said you have like 5,000 customers around or something. You obviously, have tons of warehouse space where people are doing warehouse activities inside them. But what are you seeing where your clients, of Prologis Essentials specifically, where are they kind of investing the most right now or planning to invest into, and what kind of solutions are they asking for the most? Hunter, you want to kick that one off?
Yeah, so to be honest, for 2024, they're asking for the cheapest racking possible. So
interesting.
It was,
okay.
Used equipment this year
really
has been big. And I think, again, this was an election year. I think we all know how the economy's going, and interest rates are high. So I think folks were really being cost conscious this year. And then other folks are they want to make that leap. And that's where I said that financing. And so now they're starting to realize, hey, I can make this big leap, in efficiency into robotics and automation, and it's not going to hurt me that bad. It's not going to hurt my pocket that bad. So it's pretty funny. It's either I want to be as cheap as possible, or I'm ready. I'm ready to invest. But that I'm ready to invest, that's a long decision for a lot of companies. That's a 12-month decision for a lot of folks. And so I think things in Q2, Q3 are going to start opening up, and folks are going to be a little more willing to invest. That's Hunter's crystal ball, which we'll see if that means anything.
Yeah, if it comes true, all hail Hunter. If it doesn't come true, just forget that he said that, right?
If it comes true, Kevin, next year is Hunter's last year here. He's gonna be famous. He's gonna be famous, and he's gonna be on news somewhere.
So I think that's very interesting, because I think there is a lot of talk about this, and for the past year or so, right? The economy, and like you mentioned there, like people holding back like investment a little bit. I know there was like I think last year in 23 there was like some pullback on projects by like some major players out there and things of that nature, and then that kind of reversed a little bit. So it'd be interesting to see, and I think it'd be great, obviously, if it kind of opens back up in Q2, Q3, like you said there, Hunter, and we see more of that investment like flowing in. But I think there is, you're telling us, that people are interested in used equipment and stuff like that. I think people are being very conscious about that and a little little holding back in a sense to see some of the things that are going to happen here. But what about on your side, Parth? What do you see people kind of investing in or asking about the most?
I think, yeah, racking was one of the big hit for this year. I think what this year, uh, if it's not related to capex, what this year was about customers asking or exploring automation and robotic solutions, right? They're like, hey, how do I solve for this? We all know the sales cycle for robotics and automation is long, but they use this year, I would say, to just really start learning more about the automation and robotics space, engaging with the different vendors, partners in this space, and trying to learn about, hey, this is my operation. What should I be looking at? So my crystal ball is like they use this year. Not everyone, but many companies use this year to learn what is the right robot solution fit that really is for them. And going into 2025, they will start to work on those projects. They will try to fund those projects and start working on that. So that's something I saw this year. And also going into 2025, one thing that this was a very interesting stat that came out of our real estate team was around 81% of customers are worried about or are curious for solutions around physical security, which was very interesting stat that we learned as we engaged with our real estate team. So I think building upon that stat, I feel like going into 2025, I will also see a consistent investment into physical security, be it cameras, be it fencing, or like as simple as that. But I think that is also going to be a consistent focus on that going into 2025.
Interesting on that front there, and I think that's super important. And I learned that lesson in my career too. Somebody stole a trailer out of our yard one time, full of pallets actually, and we didn't realize.
That is common in New Jersey for sure, Kevin.
Yeah. Oh, what are you saying about New Jersey? Okay. All right. But yeah, actually we didn't even realize until like we needed more pallets. We went to go get them off the trailer, and the guy on the dock was like, "Oh, the trailer's not there," and we're like, "What?" Well, we had a full trailer of pallets, and somebody just yanked it off the dock door. Pretty interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to hear that too, and I think it's interesting too, kind of seeing you kind of both are talking a little bit there that like investment in some of these larger scale systems and stuff and equipment and automation and robotics is going to increase a little bit as we get further into 25. So that kind of, I guess, teases up into the next question here. I mean, where does that kind of leave us, all these things that we've seen over the past year kind of heading into 2025, and what kind of problems do you think people are really going to be trying to solve now in 2025? And Parth, you want to take that one?
So the way I think about 2025, and I might be a myopic view here, but I think what I have seen in 2024 was customers are tenants, specifically for Prologis, they had this excess capacity because of the COVID times, and they now 3PLs specifically are the brand's churn is their typical cyclic nature that they have it. They also hold on to their cash for 2024. They're under the election. So there were so many uncertainties. So with that uncertainties built up for 2024, going into 2025, I feel like many customers or many tenants will go and try to reassess their network strategy, meaning that there are 10 buildings across North America. They will try to assess that are the 10 buildings right 10 buildings? Do we need 8? Do we need 5? Or do we need 14? So that network strategy conversation will start or might be already be happening. While they're doing this network strategy conversations, they will also try to go into like each individual nodes of the building of the network, meaning that each individual warehouses. And then they will pick up 1 or 2 warehouses that they really want to solve for 2025, either through automation, through robotics, through WMS or different technology, and try to solve for that in 2025. So if I have to say for 2024, it's going to be like we saw the challenges, all the big challenges bubbled up to the sea level. Going into 2025, like, yes, we know the challenges. Let's reassess our lay of the land and try to focus on the biggest pain point for 2025.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think it's a really good perspective there on looking at that. And Hunter, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things about Prologis and Essentials and why I came here, and when you think when you think about, okay, we have 5,000 plus customers. I mean, we have the smallest mom and pops to the largest, retailers on the planet.
Yeah.
So everybody has a different problem to solve. And some of the smaller, medium-sized companies, they don't have engineering teams. They don't have real estate teams. They want to save money, and they don't quite know how to get there. And so that's kind of what we want to instill. And if I can instill one thing, I probably say this, Parth can attest. I probably say this at least once a day, but the requirements drive the design, and we have to get to like, what are the requirements that the company needs? And a lot of folks need to be like guided. So I think they want to solve their problems. They don't quite know what their problem truly is, and how to solve it. And so that's the fun part, where we can come in and use data scientists and data analytics teams, and like, give us your data and give us what your goals are, and we'll help you get to that problem, that savings, whatever you need. Parth mentioned 3Ps. A lot of their contracts are, you pay us per unit, per package, whatever the contract is. And if they spend more labor, then they're losing money. But if they can optimize and spend less labor, for example, then they're making more money. So they're looking at, how can I optimize my current processes as well, and all the way to the largest 3Ps. So I mean, I think the trends will be, it's always, how can we save money? We have labor problems. What can we do about that? And how can we be smart about it? And even looking not just at 25, but we're working with customers to look at 25, 26, 27. What are your trends, and where do you see your growth moving? Because you never want to just plan for a year. You got to look several years out and make smart guesstimates.
I think it's a great point from Hunter. I think one of the things that we saw, and at least I can stress, so we've been helping one of the major 3P to really help them with the network strategy. And let's be honest, with Prologis, we get very good data access to the real estate data, right? So we have the data access from the rent rates to labor rates to the just understanding the labor pool within 1 mile, 5 miles, and 10 miles that you always think about when you're closing a building or opening up a new building. So I think what we have seen is when it comes to network strategy, we can be really like tactical partner of a lot of companies who are reassessing that and come with the like actual data, which we know it's proven from the from the folks on the ground.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think you do have, and that's kind of like, why I want to have this discussion with you guys, because you do have like access to, that data, but also access to like the people that are actually, doing this, like the 5,000 customers. And like you said, Hunter, I mean, from, small mom and pop up to like, these big retailers, et cetera. And, obviously I see your buildings all over the place, and they're various different sizes and, various different clients within there. So it gives you a very unique perspective on the industry as a whole, which I think is really great to draw from.
Kevin, just
Sure.
One point. I think just to reaffirm that, we have a team called Essential Solutions Manager. They are pretty much our boots on the ground, always visiting different clients in different markets. So the insights we develop is basically coming from the floor. So that's always good to engage with that Essential Solutions Manager to learn about how their market is performing, and that bubbles up to us to really understand how the overall North American market is performing.
Yeah, I think it's very useful to be able to have that, and to Hunter's point here, I think he made a couple times, like that data will kind of help you very much further, like make the right decision, I think, on what you're going to do and how you're going to better improve the operation overall. So now I'm curious from your perspectives too, as you guys sit, obviously you're in multiple different states and in different parts of the country as well, dealing with multiple different types of clients, working in multiple different industries. So, obviously from that perspective, there's regulatory and compliance things that come into play. So, are there any regulatory or compliance changes that warehouse operators should be aware of heading into the new year? And if so, how can they prepare for that? Parth, you want to start that one?
Yeah, I think there are two major changes or two major regulation compliance that I would be keeping my eyes on, and both are impacting my inventory. And inventory, as we all know, is one of the biggest, always and will be a biggest challenge to tackle. The
Yeah.
first one is a 3-to-1 rule that we all know about with de minimis that coming into the play. We know the current administration already proposed to look at it, and we know the next administration is going to definitely try to solve for that. So, meaning that anyone who is importing clothes, mostly clothes, that's what I heard about, mostly apparel industry is going to be impacted a lot, or they will need to prepare for that, because if they close that loophole, meaning that everyone has to either will have to open up a building in North America, and this is where a simple plug, Prologis can help. But I think they all have to open up a building or use that existing space that we can help out. That's one of the rules, one of the compliance that I'm keeping my eyes on. And the second one is, of course, the tariffs that we know that are going into effect with the new administration. And I think, as I mentioned during our earlier conversation, I think one of the challenge with tariffs is that the companies that will be impacted will be walking on a tightrope for at least first 3 months, which aligns with Hunter's timeline as well. That Q1, that they need to make a decision: do we front load the inventory, or should we start investing on things that can really improve our operations?
Interesting. And I'm curious on the tariff side too, because I've seen some talk of this. I mean, have you seen some of your clients already, like they're trying to bring more inventory in now to kind of like, get ahead of it a little bit? And are you seeing that in the market right now?
We are not exactly that front loading the inventory, but what I have seen is customers are looking for, or brands, I would say, brands, apparel focused brands who are in either Canada or either in Mexico with a building there. They're trying to open up a building in the United States, which then that way they don't have to worry about any de minimis rules.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. And Hunter, what about on your side? Are you seeing anything additional there?
Yeah, I think California is just a tough state to work in general, but
Yeah.
I think there might be some regulations around cooling warehouses, and a lot of our focus should all be on, warehouse jobs are tough.
Mm.
It's just the way it is, and whatever we can do to help the associates be more comfortable in these environments. So I think there's some regulations coming out, and we're starting to look at, can we offer some things to cool warehouses a little differently? Adding HVAC to a 1,000,000 square foot building, for example, it's pretty costly, but
Yeah.
maybe some requirements coming down to where we need to cool some spaces. So we're starting to look at how we can help our tenants there.
Interesting. And how do tenants, like, I guess, stay on top of that or get ahead of some of that stuff? Like, especially like, if there's, like you just mentioned, the cooling stuff, like the regulations, because you mentioned, it's funny, you mentioned there's a lot of opportunity with someone that has like a 40-foot clear height, but then if you got to put in some cooling as well, it becomes like very, costly to cool that additional space too. So how do you kind of advise your tenants to either like stay ahead of that or work with them to make sure that like they're going to be in compliance when that comes around?
Pick up the phone and call us? No. But start those conversations, as soon as possible. We have I think we have 32 we call markets. There's boots on the ground teams from the real estate side. There's maintenance teams, there's customer excellence teams. So our tenants have a number to call locally, and who can then get essentials on the call. But we try to just team up and say, hey, these regulations are coming. Can we come in and let's walk your space? Maybe the majority of their people are in 10,000 square feet of their warehouse or something. Or they're like, hey, I don't want to cool my whole space, but I need to get it down to a certain temperature. What are some options? And so, again, back to that, we really need to walk into your warehouse and ask a lot of questions. And the sooner we can just get involved, the better. So we're trying to just get more awareness too for our world in essentials, because we're still fairly new. Nobody thinks of Prologis, and like I said earlier, and thinks, oh, I'm going to get them to help me solve all my problems inside the warehouse versus just doing a lease.
Just give me a building. Yeah.
Once they realize what we can offer, and then their eyes widen, like, wow, I can come to you for all this. And so, to answer your question, just getting us involved as soon as possible.
All right, cool.
Being proactive.
All right, and we got Adrian here who's coming up to speak. Adrian, you got a question, comment? How you doing?
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for asking. The question is for the when we use the robots to try to offset some of the human labor shortages, and we say that it's a struggle to find warehouse labor. What are some of the biggest reasons that the warehouses are saying they are unable to fill all these human positions?
I can take a stab at this. And again, it depends on a lot of things. It could be regionally based. So there's certain areas where, and I'll bring up my old Amazon days because I was there from 08 to 20. And so it was really interesting seeing just the insane growth, but kind of blew my mind when one day they're like, hey, it's a 1 million square foot warehouse. We cannot hit the capacity in that warehouse because we can't get enough labor. Then you start digging into why. Well, there might be a lot of warehouses in that area, and that warehouse might have been there for 5, 7, 8 years. And in that city, that region, folks have worked there over the years and left, and they might have cycled through the labor that's available, which when you step back and think about that, you're like, that's crazy. But the warehousing has just been booming. And so that could be part of it. There could be so much competition, and if there's 20 warehouses in an area, you have to entice folks to come work for you. So they're constantly raising, the amenities and things like that. So that could be one. You could also have warehouses where there's just not a lot of labor. And in certain areas, it's interesting because the trends always seem to be the same, but you might have a super stable workforce whose average tenure is like 15 years because that's really the only warehouse around. But if they spike in volume, it's really hard to get temp labor. So depending on the industry you're in, you might have 1 or 2 or more peaks. And so how do you solve the peaks is the challenge too, because if you just don't have the labor in the area and you double or triple during a peak time, what do you do? So you have to be forward thinking about your peaks really versus your average days. Parth, you want to add anything?
Yeah. No, I think there's great points, Hunter. I think a couple of other things that I've noticed is the working environment, right? If I'm picking 50-pound pet food bags every day or sugar bags, that's always you're gonna cycle through your warehouse associate pretty quick because it's just such a tiring job. And for $22 an hour, you can probably work in an Uber and still make that dollar. So that's another thing that I have seen in the market where folks have to really work hard to bring automation or robots just to solve for that non-ergonomic friendly workplace, if you will.
Interesting points there. All right, cool. Thanks for joining us, Adrian, and chiming in here as well. I guess as we get to the end of this here, why don't we talk about what's most exciting for you guys in 2025? Could be something practical, could be something totally not practical, but really cool that's caught your attention from a technology perspective. But what are you guys most excited about for 2025? Hunter, you want to kick it off first?
Yeah, I do think things are going to open up and companies are going to want to spend a little more money starting next year now that the election's done. So I think that's exciting, and just getting our name more out there and walking more warehouses and just truly helping jump from that. We're here and we need to be up there and we don't know how to do it. And whether it's robotics or not, just solving problems. This industry, I don't know if it will ever have a lack of needing to solve those kind of problems, like massive problems for them.
Yeah.
Sure, the automation part's always exciting, but to me, it's more of the opening up and being receptive to, okay, now we're ready to have you come help us. We weren't quite ready in 24, and we're starting to see some of that already in December with folks looking at, some of those bigger automation solutions. So, that's what I'm excited about. A fresh year. And we have a saying, lots of people have the saying, but the GSD mindset of just getting shit done. Like, we're ready to help you get shit done.
All right, I like that. I like that tagline there. And Parth, what about you? What's most exciting heading into the new year?
I'm excited to hear more of Hunter's punchlines, but
Yeah, he's got all these little catchphrases I
I'm
see.
like a broken record, though. I need some new ones. I think I'm getting tired of them.
But on a serious note, yeah, I think for us as well, like the second point of what Hunter said, it's like just being out in the field, creating awareness about Prologis Essentials, shaking hands, meeting new folks, interesting folks, finding interesting challenges to solve for is what I'm really excited about, because at the end, with the breadth of Prologis, I think there are so many challenges to be solved for, and I think being that value creator and the growth partner for a lot of these warehouses is what I'm more excited for in 2025.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, and I think that would be really interesting to see. And I think every year, we've seen some definite exciting stuff continue to progress in the industry. And I think it's never ending. I think, Hunter, as you said, there's always some problem to solve. So it'd be interesting to see that as well. And looks like we got one last question or comment here. Tariq, come off mute here.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for having me. I have a
Definitely.
question that what are the two big highlighted gap in warehousing efficiency and how will you address them moving forward in 2025?
The two biggest gaps in efficiency. Well, I think one is just, again, we're going to go back to that tagline, the cube is king, maximizing the physical efficiency of your warehouse. It's just huge. It pays dividends to use every square inch of your warehouse to be working for you. So I think like that's the physical one. And then, I mean, I call myself an industrial engineer, but I'm an industrial engineer. So my whole life has been, warehouses and processes and efficiency. And I don't care if you're the largest company in the world, everybody has efficiency improvements. And it's all around how do you maximize the most out of your workforce, ergonomics, and just helping the associates maximize whatever their role is. So it's not a one size fits all, and that's why I always go back to what are your pain points. Your pain points might be an inbound for one company, and they're fine in picking and packing, or in another company, it's their pick and stow is not efficient, and so I mean there are solves for all of it, but it's really trying to understand. Do you know where your pain point truly is? You may think it's inbound, but maybe it's not.
I think, yeah, while the vertical, using vertical space is always the most important, and as Hunter said, it's an inefficient place. We haven't seen it. Another thing that as I recall our conversation, one thing that I feel like is inefficient or really the SMB market, mid market is solving for is labor tracking or labor management of it. So if I am a 3PL or if I'm a mid SMB brand, I need to really understand how much labor or track my labor for each and every operation. So that way I can go back and understand that, okay, I'm spending a lot on my inbound. Why am I spending it? Then you understand that could be just people are waiting for Wi-Fi to connect to a scanner, or it's a very heavy product and they need some kind of a support solution to solve for that. So I think labor management is what I feel like it has been there for years and decades, if you will, but I think it's still an opportunity for a lot of SMB and mid brands to solve for that.
Interesting thoughts there all around, definitely. And Tariq, thank you very much for the question and joining in here as well. So appreciate both Parth and Hunter joining us here today to talk about this. Great to hear from their perspectives and obviously where they sit, they're in a unique position to kind of look at the industry as a whole, which is pretty cool to see and pretty cool to hear from them. So now, you guys, if people are interested in maybe getting shit done, GSD, as Hunter said there earlier, what's the best way to learn more about Prologis Essentials and get in touch with you guys?
You can pick us on LinkedIn. I think is a great way, and then we can start communicating. You can go on the website as well. We can always post that link to read more about Essentials and what we're doing. And I joked earlier, but I think in our digital world, folks don't pick up the phone anymore and just chat. So like if anybody wants to just chat about the industry or like, hey, what do you think about this robotic solution, or here's our problem, we're always here to just offer guidance too. Like pick up the phone, call us, ping us on LinkedIn. I'd love to help.
All right. Awesome.
And Kevin,
Yeah.
Kevin, if you didn't pick up on the another tagline from Hunter, pick up the damn phone. That's another tagline.
We say that a lot because I always hate like asking folks, and they're like, well, I sent an email and I haven't heard back yet. Like, did you pick up the phone and just
Yeah. Did
call
you
them?
call them? Yeah.
I texted them. I'm like, no, I'm waiting for a text.
Love it. We need a little book of Hunterisms. That's what I'm excited for in 2025. I'll say too, Parth. All right, cool. Appreciate you guys both joining us here today, and appreciate everybody for tuning in as well. So Parth and Hunter, thank you once again for joining today, and thank you everybody else for listening in. Hope everybody has a great rest of the day.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.